with Cheryl with Charlotte, where emphasis is placed on finding balance in relationships. I am the creator and host, and I just want to say thank you again for tuning in to another new episode, one that's dear to my heart. We're going to talk about dementia and Alzheimer from a perspective of a caregiver, as opposed to more, and also we're going to dive into, of course, about the disease or the condition itself, but a caregiver's perspective, their experience. And in this case, it's going to be my sister. And but as a whole, because my dad was diagnosed with this condition, so as a family, we all experienced it, but not to the level that our oldest sister took that role as caregiver. So this particular episode is actually titled Switching Role, a sister's story when caregiving becomes the call. And sometimes, it may become the call, but you may not answer the call. But I just want to say thank you to my sister, my older sister, for answering the call as caregiver to my dad, to our dad. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because that is huge when you make that type of sacrifice to put your life on hold or to step out of where your comfort level and walk into something that's uncomfortable, that you wouldn't make that sacrifice. So thank you so much for that. Again, I can't even say thank you enough. But she took on that role actually back in 2018 after we had lost our sister, Belinda, in 2017. And she died of colon cancer and lymphoma cancer. And so you have to understand too that anytime you're a caregiver, any medical condition you have or any underlying medical condition, it only heightens because there's so much stress to being in that role. And just information, just want to share with you because I'm looking at research. 30% of just caregivers in general are likely to die before the individual that they're caring for. That's 30%. But if that individual has dementia or Alzheimer, it increases to 40% that there's a likelihood of the caregiver dying before the individual they're caring for. And that's a very high number. That means it's 4 out of 10 are likely to pass before that individual. And 66% of caregivers are women, which is really no surprise to me and maybe to you, but not to me, because normally there are women who step up first when it comes to nurturing or caring for someone. So 66% really are women. And so you got to understand too, it's a huge role to step into that simply because you give up so much in order to put someone else above you and make them first. And so we're going to talk about the conversation I had with my sister. And so I took notes and asked her some questions, because to walk in her shoes, I don't even know what that feel like because I wasn't a caregiver. I assisted, I helped. And I thank God that we had a family that stepped up and helped. And so, but she was the caregiver because we would visit Dad, help out, and then we would leave, but she would stay. And so all the things that she was involved in, I can't even relate to that level simply because I didn't experience it on that level. And even the level I did experience it was even overwhelming because it was a lot that we did because he needed so much. So when my sister died, my sister took on that role. Our dad was already in a position and condition that he literally could not live by himself. And so I just want to say that when she stepped into that role back in February of 2018, and she stayed with my dad and she cared for my dad, took the role of the bulk of it till actually August of 2023, because that's when he passed away. And so there was a lot that was going on within that period. We're going to talk about that, but that's a lot of years to put your life on hold, but she did that. And so the least we could do as a family is to step up. But everybody don't get that type of support. Some people doing it all by themselves, and we're going to talk about that particular role of caregiving when you don't have the support. This particular one is when you do have the support, and it's still difficult because it's not an easy role to be in. So one of the questions that I did ask my sister, and that was, why did you even decide to move in with our dad when you had the right to say no? And she told me, she said, well, when Belinda, our sister, passed in 2017, she said she just decided to take on dad as a responsibility. And she said, I looked at my life and my kids were grown. They was independent on their own. And so I wasn't married, but everybody else was married, had their home, doing life. And so she took on that role because she was the least of, as far as having a home at the time and, of course, being married. And so she took on that role as with my dad. And we thank her for that. And, of course, she was there from 2018 to August of 23. And another question was, what are some of the characteristics or behavior due to our father dementia or Alzheimer? And she said, first, there is no cure for Alzheimer. There's no cure for that. But the end always results in death. And that's one that you have to accept. They don't get better, but the end always results in death. But the inability to perform simple tasks, such as just preparing his meal, bathing, just insufficient voluntary control over your urination, your bowel, ability to just reason was difficult. And the period during COVID, she said, was the worst because there was a lot more isolation. You know, you want to step out, go to the store for a minute, go do something just to get away. But COVID hit us so hard till you weren't able to do a lot of those things simply because it was dangerous out there being in the element of COVID. And so she said that was the most difficult period for her because of the isolation. And she said, you know, and you have to constantly be looking out for like rashes and wounds when you're dealing with people with COVID or Alzheimer. And what I like to add with that is, in knowing my dad, you know, he was very short-tempered. You know, he would a lot of times be very paranoid about a lot of things, you know, thinking you stole something or you're going to take something or, you know, I mean, he was just paranoid about a lot of things. His temper was short. My dad our dad was a Renaissance man. He was his own man. He ran his house. He took care of his family. You know, he was a man's man. And so to see him in that state of where he was during that period, you know, to go from a man's man to one that you literally have to care for, and he's resisting you on all levels because he still thinks he's that guy. When clearly we know that he's not, but he thinks he's still that guy. So there was a lot of resistance when it came to caring for him. And that came from, as my sister said, just extremely stubborn. He was stubborn because he still wanted to do it his way, not knowing that his way really wasn't the right way. So you was always in conflict with him, trying to get him to do things as he should do things. And then, of course, in the end, because of it, he became more like childlike at the very end, literally childlike. And so that was, you know, hard to just watch, knowing that who he was as opposed to where he is and who he is in this state. And so another question was asked, once in that position, did you have any moments of regrets? And she said her regrets were due to lack of knowledge of the condition, and I had to learn as she went along. And so she's basically just saying, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared for what I was stepping into. And some of you out there who maybe are caregivers, who maybe listen to this, and who may at some point step into that role. Like she said, that was the hardest thing for her. That was the most regrettable thing for her. And that is, I walked into something I knew very little about. And I just had to learn as I went along. And that is not the way you want to learn, simply because everything is going on at once and you in it. So you need to be prepared. You need to be equipped. And being equipped meaning you need to be knowledgeable. And you need to learn, because their behavior would take you off guard. And you would, the more you know about dementia, the more you know about Alzheimer, the more you'll be prepared when these behaviors start to happen. And then another question is, what support did you receive from your family or friends? And she spoke about our brother who lives in Houston. And he would come down and he would maintain our dad's house, do all the repairs, keep it up, anything that was needed. She'll make a to-do list, and he would come and he would do it. And then, of course, there was on occasion that he would come, and the time that she asked to go and have some me time, he would also assist with that. And so my sister's role, my role and my sister as well, we would do things like financial arrangement, do the laundry, do the meals, staying with home, doing also taking when she need a break, we will give her that break. Those breaks are important because you need to rest. You need to get away. You need to not even think about what you need to still be doing for dad. You need to just do you. You need that moment for yourself so you won't be in that 40% dying before the one that you're caring for passes. You need that break. And so when she asked for it, we never hesitated. If she said she needed, we gave it to her. Because we wanted to make sure she was also in a good space with who she is in that moment, mentally, emotionally, physically, all of that. We wanted to make sure that we did our part, because we still, with everything we still did less. And I remember on a lot of his appointments, I would take him to his doctor's appointment with the VA, simply because, she was doing so much. So give me that role. Give me that role and let me take him to all his appointments. And I did that up until he decided that he refused to go, because he don't need a doctor. Because I'm not sick, I feel good, I feel normal. And he literally refused to go. We kept counseling, till it was just, he's not going. He's not going. And so they end up at that point bringing services inside the home. And that's where she was saying too, that the VA was such a big help with making sure that we could manage our father. And so, and with that being made, this is a friend of the family, I'm getting ahead of myself. But she talked about also her oldest son, who would make sure he was groomed, his haircuts, and his beard trimmed. Because when he would go to the VA, we would make sure that he got the haircut. He would get the beard trimmed. But now that he refused to go, thank God her oldest son would come and he would do it for him, just to make sure he doesn't just look like he's some caveman, because everything grows. And so we thank God for her oldest son for doing that for our dad. And then we had a friend that would drop off meals, and she was a great cook, so she would do special meals too for our dad. And she was like, it's plenty enough for you to eat too. She was that person. And she would always check on him. And then he was so much involved in church that the church members also would come and sit with him and visit with him, sing with him, pray over him, and things like that, because it takes people. It takes people in order to create this little village that you can have, that you're not in this alone, because it would be so hard to feel like you're in this all by yourself. But like I said, we'll get more into that next week. But it's too much to carry for one person. It's far too much to carry. And then what support did you get from outside resources to assist you with our dad? And that's when she talked strongly about the VA. She talked strongly about the VA. She talked strongly about Meals on Wheels. And the VA provided the chaplains, social workers, pension advisor, nutritionists, mental health doctors, hospice, and from mental support meetings. And thank you to the VA. Now, if you're out there servicing someone and you're the caregiver, and this person's not involved with have no history of ever being in any military branch. Our father happened to be with the Army. It's a blessing if you have that. But if you don't have that, we'll talk about this also, but there's other services and programs that you can also link into it, so that you don't have to feel like you're in this all alone. Because she said that she did a lot when she went to YouTube She went to YouTube because she looked at Teepa Snow, and we're going to have this listed, Bamboo Care, Dementia with Grace, and Pamela D. Wilson, because all of those helped her to understand a lot what was going on. It educated her also how to deal with hospitals and agencies and different things like that, and also with like nursing home, if it ever go to that. How do you manage that? Because you think about it, you're stepping into something unknown, unfamiliar with, unaware, unprepared, and you need to get prepared. So those are some of the things she felt worthy of mentioning, simply because you need to get educated on things that you need to do, like a power of attorney, or your legal stuff in line and intact, while you can still have some level of where he might can come in and out of reality to the world that he's now in. So it's just a lot to do. And so another thing was, what are your most challenging, that you found most challenging to you overall? What did you find most challenging in your role as caregiver? And first thing she said was safety. Safety. How do you keep this man safe? Because he will leave. I mean, he'll go out the door. He's not gonna go far, but you gotta find wherever he is. So how do you keep him inside? So you gotta always keep your eye and keep him managed, on making sure you don't lose him. And then there were times that we would go over and it'll be gas. You can smell gas because he's went in and he's turned on the gas, went and sat down, and you can smell gas from the outside. Or it may be an example where he decided he's gonna heat his own plate, and he's gonna put the actual plate on the stove, turn the fire on, and walk away. And don't plan on coming back because he's forgot that he even put it on the stove. So it's, how do you keep him safe? Safe from sharp objects. Safe from getting into something he has no knowledge of that could be harmful to him, because you got to keep him safe. That's your first thing, is keep him safe. Cleanliness, bathing, proper bathroom usage, because you get to the point where the bathroom is anywhere and everywhere. But it's all about keeping this man clean, because at the point he got to a place that he didn't like taking baths. And that's one of the things that a lot of them with dementia and Alzheimer, that's one of those behaviors, they don't like bathing. But you got to keep the man clean. So we would just make up things, and of course he'll believe you because he doesn't know the difference, just to get him to take a bath, because we just want to keep him clean. And our sister, she will a lot of times call us over, and we would tag team on how we can go in there and persuade him just to take a bath. I mean, it takes a team to get those things. So one person, it's just exhausting. And then just being in a place of normalcy. Normalcy is, can I just get you to a place of somewhat like you used to be, where you can do some things. But she did say something that I thought was so profound. And she said, you allow that person to do everything they possibly are capable of doing without assistance. Because you want to let them do as much as they can while they can. Because at some point in time, they can't do it. And you would have to be the one to do it. So you have to understand that, yes, you might can do it faster. Yes, you might can do it easier. Yes, they might be in the way, but let them do it as long as they can do it. Because there's at least some cognitive activity going on that they can do something that's functional for them. So you allow that to happen. And not just be in a hurry, just want to get it done and get out the way, but allow them to use that last little bit of what they have to do something that's for themselves. And what emotional and physical toll did caring for him have on you? She said, emotionally, I had to let go of some personal desires and focus on what was needed. And she's just saying, things that I desired on my own, I had to put that away and put that to the side, because I had to basically stay within task on hand, things that need to be done now. Focus on what was needed, not what I wish I had. Because I really want to be doing this, but I'm doing this. And I had to give that up. I had to give up my own desires. That's sacrifice, and that is critical. And that is huge, to be willing to put your desires on hold to make sure someone else steps in above you and you put them first. And so she said, but physically, she said, God kept me healthy to deal with the situation. So she didn't have the health issues. So thank God for that. Like my sister had. She said, but God kept me healthy. So she was protected. So thank you, God, for that. And how did you handle stress? And this is big. She said, by joining caregivers meetings and getting away when I could. So two things. Joining caregivers meetings, meaning I need to talk to somebody who can relate to me. I need to talk to someone and be with other people who in my shoes, like I'm in my shoes, to hear their story so I can talk openly and they can relate and they can understand. Because you can say some things and we're like, yeah, we feel where you are, but we're not walking in your shoes. So you want to get with people where you can also relate to you, because you have things you need to say and things that you want to say, things that you know that you understood. Not just someone hurt you, but do you understand? And so she said that was a huge, huge help for her. And then the other thing, like she was saying, and that is to just get away and have some me time. You need some me time to just be yourself. Some me time to just know that I don't have to worry about my dad. I don't have to worry about somebody else. All I need to do is just worry about myself. And that's that. At this place in time, I can be selfish because I've already been one of humility and I've given, but now I can just be me. And we always provided whatever time she needed. We never questioned her about it. We never moaned or griped about it. All we did was make sure that we gave her the time that she said she needed, as often as she said she needed it. And it really wasn't like she took that much time. She could have done more, but any time and all time that she asked or desired, we made sure that she gave, that time was given to her. And another one was, were you able to find balance in caring for yourself while in this role? And she said it took her a long time to develop a livable routine. And all she said was not just, she said livable, and livable is a choice word she chose, because I can now manage where I am and what I'm doing. But I was struggling before that. You could be alive in something, but it's not yet a livable position or place that you're in. But she's saying it was livable. I could manage it. At least it was better. And so it took her a long time, and we talked about that. Why? Because I wasn't prepared for this role. I didn't know all of this came with being a caregiver for someone with Alzheimer or dementia. I didn't know what I was really stepping into. So it took me a long time. She didn't say a moment. She didn't say a short while. She didn't say a few months. She said a long while before she was in a place of a livable position, where it was a routine that she could actually manage it. And what was life like before you took on this role as caregiver and caretaker? She said she was a homebody. She had a 2-bedroom apartment, and she worked from home. My sister, actually, she liked her own time. She's a very private person. She loved, and this is what gets me, and I know this was a huge sacrifice for her. She loved her private time. She loved her space to herself. She was that person. I'm a very sociable person. I'm so outgoing. I love being around people. She was more an introvert, not an extrovert. So you know, for her to take on that role as a caregiver was a huge step, to step out of one who preferred isolation and step into someone you always had to be around. That was even bigger for her because of her personality. But she sacrificed that to do that. And what did you miss most about your life before taking on this role? And she said, basically, freedom. Freedom to come and freedom to go. Because when we weren't there, she was locked in most time with Dad. And so she might step out occasionally, run to the store real quick and run right back. But she missed her freedom to come and to go. And she did this for years. So those moments we gave her were those times that she could come and go as she chooses, and she could be back in that space of where she used to be. And that was a place of freedom. And what would you tell someone that is in this role, or maybe faced with being in this role in the future? Because you don't know what life is going to deal you. You don't know you're going to be blindsided with. You don't know. You have no idea. And if your parents are here and they're aging, or they're going to remain in good health, or it's going to be one day that you're going to step into that role, or you're going to be when caregiving becomes your call, or you're going to step into the role when you're called to be a caregiver, or you're going to sacrifice. What are you going to do? Or what is your next move? Because if your parents or your spouse, it could be anyone, or you may be the caregiver of your sister or your sibling, whatever. But if you take on that role, it's a huge role, and it's a huge shoe to fill. But you want to step in and prepared for that role. And these are things that she said. She lists several things that I want to share with you real quick. And I love the first one she said. She said, stay prayed up, because you're going to need God. Stay prayed up, because you're going to need Him. You're going to need Him for comfort, strength. You're going to need Him for just your own sanity. You're going to need Him so that you won't be in that 40%. That you can even be sustainable while you go through all this stuff, that you don't fall. That you can stand up in it, not be laying down in it. That you can not have the level of stress that make you sick. That you don't find yourself, that you don't die in it. You need God. So she said, stay prayed up, because you're going to need it. And she said, let them do, again, as much as they can do while they can do it. Get organized. That's another thing she want to tell you. If you're in this role, or you're going to be in this role one day, be organized. Don't go in and just say, well, I'll just go along as it go along. No, go get organized. She said, get you a notebook or a tablet, so you can list medical information, household bill, financial records, who visited, anything that's unusual that happened. Write it down, because you're going to need this information. Be organized. Anything like wandering away from home. When did he wander away from home? How often it's happening. Take notes. Be organized. Then she said, be aware of health aides who insist on using drugs to keep him in control so they can do their job. Because what ended up happening, she said, a lot of times those drugs that they may want to give have some kind of side effects. And who's going to deal with those side effects? When people leave you, you're going to be left with the one dealing with those side effects. So anyone that's going to keep your person drugged just so their job can be easier, you don't want them. You want to request somebody else immediately. You don't want to do that. And something else she said, let's see what else. And that is safety tips. Be careful, she said, with throw rugs or cards on the floor. Because you got to understand, people like that, they fall. You don't want them to fall on anything, trip on anything. Adjust the hot water. I know you think that's simple, because they mess with gadgets. Adjust the hot water, so even if they turn the hot water on, it won't burn them. Because our dad he messed with everything. If his hand could touch it, he gonna open it, he gonna fidget with it, he gonna do something. So she had to end up locking the kitchen cabinets and drawers, because they love to ramble through things, and some of the things you may have missed could be harmful. And especially if they're sharp objects. Hide your keys to the cars. Hide your keys to the house. They lose everything. Everything. And if you got a key to a car, I promise you, they think they can drive. So you want to put up everything where they cannot find it. Hide the keys, people. Ask for help and be very specific on what's needed. So when you want help or assistance, be direct, be specific what that is, so that nobody have to guess what you're asking for. Because when you need help, you just need help. She said also the door camera chime, because she said they love opening doors for everybody and anybody. And so in this particular case, you want to make sure that they don't let strangers in the house. because they will open the door. And you want to always know who's at the door. Set up power of attorney. We talked about that. Even if you're not the one going to be the power of attorney, make sure you have your legal stuff in order. And it's really for their protection. Be respectful and keep in mind that your loved one, and this is critical, guys. Be respectful and keep in mind that your loved one is still in there somewhere. I know you don't see them. I know you don't hear them as they're talking and as they going through this dementia and Alzheimer. You're looking at them like you can't believe this what they're doing. But that person who used to be is in there. So be mindful of that. Although it's hard to see it or believe because they don't know how to express it. But they're actually in there. And it says too, and she said, I want to leave you with one thing. She said, remember this, especially if you're caring for your parent. Remember once that you were babies and your parent aided you and now it's your turn to help them. Just know that. So at some point, just know that it's now your turn. So as they say, you're once an adult and you're twice a child. Simply because Alzheimer's dementia, you're truly back to being that child for the second time. And like I said, before our dad died, he really was that child. I mean, an infant. He was on the floor. He gnawed on everything. He was that baby. He was that baby. And so it's hard to watch someone you love, who you know, with that Renaissance man, that man's man, to be in a place of he's now a child. It is hard, but once adult, twice a child. And so I want to leave you with that. I don't know where your position is with caring as a caregiver. I have no idea what that is. But you don't know what's coming. Even if you're not today, you still may be tomorrow. But if you find yourself and you know it's going in that direction, like my sister said, get the education. Knowledge is power. But like she said, I stepped into something I was so unaware of. I wasn't ready for. I wasn't knowledgeable about. And it took me a long time to even adjust and to get to a place of just livable, in a livable space where I felt I could not manage that. So don't be that person. And so she gave you good tips for tools, places you could go on YouTube, but do your research. Do your research. And I hope this has helped someone. But that's all dear to my heart, and because it's so relatable to me because of my dad. So I hope this has been good feeding for you. Next episode would clearly be where you don't get the assistance, you don't get the help, you don't get the support. And we want to dive more into that because this for my sister still wasn't easy. Let me make sure you understand that. This still was not easy. She sacrificed. She gave up a lot. She did a lot. But at the same time, what she also had with help and support. Can you imagine if you had none of this or so little of this and that pressure was on yourself? Let's dive into that next week and talk more about that. Let me say thank you again for all your support and your encouragement as I continue this podcast journey. And you can check me out on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also look in terms of, talk to your family. I'm just telling you, talk to your family. Be close. Everybody don't support, but you want your family support if this ever come to be a reality in your family. You want that family support. So thank you again for tuning in. I will be looking forward to our next particular episode. Make sure you have not yet subscribed or followed, you do so. Share this if you find this useful information to someone you think will benefit from it. If you like the information, please click the like button. And I just want to say thank you again. I love you guys and see you on the next one. Thank you.